The jungle was a living thing, breathing and pulsating with an energy that made even the most seasoned explorers feel small. It stretched endlessly, a maze of green walls and shadowy depths, where sunlight barely kissed the ground. Legends of the place were whispered in hushed tones by villagers who lived at its edges. They spoke of spirits, ancient curses, and a hunger that consumed those who ventured too far. But none of that deterred Dr. Elise Moran, a determined biologist with a penchant for the unexplored. She had spent her career chasing elusive species, and the rumors of giant carnivorous plants hidden in this uncharted jungle were too tantalizing to resist. She assembled a team: Samir, the weathered guide, Jonah, the skeptical photographer, and Clara, her eager assistant. As the group pushed deeper into the jungle, the air grew thicker, saturated with the perfume of decaying vegetation. The trees seemed impossibly tall, their tangled roots forming grotesque shapes that resembled twisted faces. Birds called out, their cries echoing unnervingly, but as the hours passed, those sounds faded, replaced by an eerie silence that felt almost sentient. On the third day, they found the first sign of something unusual: a circle of trees with bark peeled clean, their trunks scarred with jagged claw marks. At the center lay a decayed carcass of an animal, its flesh unnaturally withered, as if drained of life. This isn't right," Samir muttered, his voice trembling. "We should turn back." Elise, ever the rational scientist, dismissed his fears. "It's probably a territorial predator. Let's keep moving." But that night, as they camped near a sluggish, black river, Samir's fears seemed less irrational. The jungle came alive with strange noises, low, guttural growls, and faint whispers that sounded human but distorted, as if spoken underwater. Jonah swore he saw eyes glinting from the darkness, but when he pointed his flashlight, there was nothing there. The following morning, Clara was gone. Her tent was undisturbed, her belongings untouched, but there was no sign of her. They searched for hours, calling her name, their voices swallowed by the oppressive canopy. As the sun began to set, they found her backpack snagged on a thorny vine, covered in a sticky, black residue that smelled of rot. "We need to leave," Jonah said, his bravado now replaced with visible fear. But Elise insisted they continue. She couldn't leave without answers, without proof of what was out there. Reluctantly, the remaining three pressed on, though an unspoken dread hung over them like a shroud. That night, Elise awoke to the sound of rustling. She peered out of her tent to see Jonah standing near the edge of the camp, staring into the trees. "Jonah," she whispered. He didn't respond. She stepped closer, her flashlight cutting through the gloom. His back was to her, his posture unnaturally stiff. As she reached out to touch his shoulder, he turned. His eyes were wide, his pupils blown, and his mouth hung open in a silent scream. Before she could react, something yanked him backward into the darkness, faster than her eyes could follow. His scream finally broke free, echoing through the jungle before being abruptly cut off. Elise froze, her mind racing. Then she heard it, a low, guttural clicking sound, rhythmic and deliberate, coming from all around her. The jungle itself seemed to pulse with the noise, the trees swaying as if alive. Samir grabbed her arm, his face pale. "Run," he hissed. They sprinted through the jungle, their flashlights bobbing wildly, casting fleeting, terrifying glimpses of twisted vines and gnarled branches. The clicking grew louder, closer, as if whatever hunted them was toying with its prey. Finally, they stumbled into a clearing, gasping for breath. At its center stood an ancient stone structure, partially swallowed by the jungle. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly in the moonlight. "This isn't on any map," Samir whispered. Drawn by an inexplicable compulsion, Elise approached the structure. The symbols seemed to shift and writhe, and the air around it felt charged. As she touched the stone, a searing pain shot through her hand, and a voice, deep, guttural, and otherworldly, spoke directly into her mind. "You should not be here." The ground beneath them trembled, and the jungle came alive with movement. Vines slithered like serpents, wrapping around Samir's legs. He screamed, slashing at them with his machete, but they were relentless, dragging him toward the darkness. Elise ran, her mind a blur of terror and disbelief. The clicking sound followed her, relentless and mocking. She tripped over a root and fell hard, the wind knocked out of her. As she struggled to rise, she saw them, figures emerging from the shadows. They were humanoid but wrong, their limbs too long, their eyes glowing with a sickly green light. One reached for her, its hand elongated and clawed. She scrambled backward, her hand brushing against something sharp. A bone, jagged and stained. She gripped it tightly, swinging wildly as the creature lunged. The bone connected, and the creature let out a high-pitched shriek, retreating into the shadows. Elise didn't wait to see if it would return. She ran, deeper into the jungle, until her legs gave out and darkness consumed her. When she awoke, she was lying on the edge of the village where her journey had begun. Her clothes were torn, her body covered in scratches and bruises. The villagers stared at her, their expressions a mix of fear and pity. "No one comes back," an elder said softly. "You are marked now." Elise didn't ask what they meant. She didn't want to know. But at night, when she closed her eyes, she heard it, the clicking, always closer, always waiting.